Welcome to Some Things Considered, the podcast where we are obsessed with story. We celebrate creativity and we talk to cool people to find out what makes them tick. I'm your host, Sean Murphy. I'm an author. I direct the Center for Story at Shenandoah University, and I run the nonprofit 1455 Lit Arts. For more about me and what I do, check out seanmurphy.net. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Some Things Considered. This is the podcast where we are obsessed with story. We celebrate creativity, and my mission is to constantly find amazing, interesting people and talk to them and find out what makes them tick. I'm Sean Murphy. I'm your host. I direct the Center for Story at Shenandoah, and I founded 1455. More about me at seanmurphy.net, but the focus of this podcast is on these aforementioned cool people. Today, we're getting two for the price of one. If you know anything about me, today's guests will be familiar because I've had them involved in certain programming I've done. I've been involved in and supported programming they've done. They are two of my local favorite people and literary heroes. So it is a genuine honor to welcome my friends Caroline Bock and Jona Colson. And we are here today. We never need an excuse, but I would be holding up, and I hope one of you can hold up, a copy of a brand new collection that has come out from Washington Writers Publishing House, America's Future. I am delighted and honored to be included in this, but that is a tiny part of why I'm excited. I'm excited about yet another amazing labor of love that came out perfectly, and we are in the throes. It just dropped, so this is hot off the presses, and we are here today to discuss and celebrate this publication. I had mentioned to both of my friends beforehand, usually I read a short bio, but I think because we're talking about them as writers, advocates, publishers, editors, and representatives of local institution, Washington Writers Publishing House, it would behoove us to have each of them talk a little bit about their backstory, how they came to do what they're doing, and then we'll get into talking about the book. So I say welcome, ladies first. Caroline, you're on.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. I love being here with you and Jona, two of my favorite people. I'm Caroline Bock. I'm the co-president and prose editor at the Washington Writers Publishing House. I have been involved with the press since 2018. It's a really unique press. It is a DC literary institution. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. Woo! That doesn't mean that I've been around for 50 years or Jona has been around for 50 years, but 50 years ago, four hippie poets started a poetry press. Grace Cavalieri was one of them, who is still with us, still our mentor, still our great friend, right, Jona? And she is in her 90s and is still active with the press. So we've had this amazing small press that is built on a cooperative model, which means you get published and you volunteer 2 years of service. And most people judge the following year's contest. That's how we find our new books. If you're a little crazy like Jona and I, you actually step up and say, I'd like to have a larger role. It actually started with an anthology. We in 2021 thought it would be a great idea to do an anthology called This Is What America Looks Like. And we proposed it to the then wonderful, wonderful president, Kathleen Wheaton. And then the pandemic hit, and it really saved my life to be able to work with Jona and work with Kathleen. And Jona and I realized that Kathleen, who had been there 8 years, was probably ready to hand off the mantle of being president. And both of us, I think, were nervous. It could be either one of us. So we talked and became co-presidents. So that's a little bit of the backstory. Jona and I also, in 2018, we both won the award from the press. I won for fiction, for Carry Her Home, a collection of short stories. And Jona won for this amazing collection of poetry, his debut called Said Through Glass. Did I get it right, Jona? There's probably things I missed.
No, that's great. That's a wonderful introduction to the press. Yeah, so I joined the press in 2018 after I won with Carolyn said, and we did kind of like a little mini tour together. I know we both have been writing, and Caroline had books before, but this was my first book, and I was happy to join this collective, this cooperative. And yeah, I stayed with the press. I think, obviously I stayed over my 2-year commitment. And then Caroline said, I don't really remember, but I think maybe it was at Kathleen's house, like, hey, would you want to do this together? And I was like, sure, why not? Like, when am I gonna have another opportunity like this, And yeah, and then that was the time that we were putting together this first anthology. This is what America looks like. And then, of course, like Caroline said, the pandemic hit and it did save me. It gave me like a focus and a project. And I was like, I was never bored, I mean, some people, I don't know, it just was a wonderful focus in addition to, trying to write your own stuff. And then we stayed on and then we got to our next one. I like how they look together. I never actually put them up together. You can see the birds, which is kind
Yeah.
of
They're such great covers, and I want to talk about all aspects from design, conception, execution. Again, congratulations. And it makes so much it's there's so much symmetry that you came together for the first anthology, which again we talked about then and celebrated accordingly.
Mhm.
Huge labor of love. This is an even more ambitious, kind of more exhaustive and very timely effort. I think everyone would want to know. There's always the origin story. What prompted, getting, because I think also you both mentioned, which is typical of you and typical of so many of our literary community, to emphasize the positive, but we don't want to overlook the fact, and you won't say it, so I will. This is a huge undertaking involving dozens and dozens and dozens of writers, rounds of editing, organization, not to mention promotion, publicity, etc. So to even contemplate doing this again, A, warrants kudos, but it also, I think, warrants like, when did you guys decide we have enough in the tank to do it and we're going to do it now? Talk a little bit about,
You're
you know,
making me tired just thinking of it, Jona.
I bet.
Well, part of it, Jona, right, was that we realized our 50th was coming up. And this is what America looks like. We had a ton of energy into it because it was the pandemic. And we then had to learn Zoom and we had to do Zoom events. We were like one of the first groups in the area that did Zoom readings. We were the first people at the Ivy in Baltimore to do a hybrid meeting where we had to realize we could set up the computer and actually send it out to the world.
Yeah.
So we had this huge, wonderful response. And we were like, well, this is good. We'll never do that again because it was so much energy. But with our 50th, I started thinking, you're only 50 once. This is it. If we're going to do one more anthology, we have to do it now. And we thought, well, it looks like the world is going to be really different too. It looks like we may have our first Black female president, and we could have a really positive impact having a diverse, inclusive anthology.
Yeah.
And we were so in that mind that I think, were taken aback when that did not happen.
Right. And yet, as art always seems to do, and in some ways, this collection, the theme, not to mention the actual writing, is precisely what the local and global community needed. Artists responding to what is the future, which always starts in the past, considers the present, and looks forward. So I hear you. I certainly share that sentiment. But my first thought when we were coming around the corner, earlier this year, when you guys were sending around the galleys and we were proofing, and I was seeing it was like, you know what? This would have been a absolute wonderful accompaniment to a brave new future, but it's also a very brave counterpoint to times we find ourselves in now, where we're looking for voices out there to give us hope, inspiration, in search of solidarity. And I certainly think that this anthology provides that.
Yeah, and I think that's in part to Jona, because we were ready to wrap this up in November, and we both agreed that we had to extend the submissions and even have people who had submitted early relook at their work. So we extended it, and I think as a small press, as a cooperative press, we could be flexible in that way. So we pushed everything forward so that we could respond to the moment. Don't you think, Jona? I mean, it sounds like we had like a real rational talk. I think it was more a little bit of panic there too. Like we wanted this to be relevant.
Yeah, and of course the call was put out before the election, and then afterwards, yeah, we both knew we have to extend it and give writers time to respond and to give us, their best work. But it was, and kind of going back to your initial thing, Sean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of administrative. I mean, the fun part is reading the work and talking about the work. But then there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. But again, we were, obviously both committed, and we had it in steps, did it in stages.
Yeah.
And it kind of all, it obviously came together, gave ourselves deadlines. But as Caroline said, because the press is small, and we can operate on kind of our own a little bit. We don't have other people telling us deadlines. So I think that kind of drives us forward too. But yeah, I mean, it's come out, and I was thinking about this a little bit. I feel like this is going to, in like 5, 10 years, this book is kind of going to be like an evolving archive, of how writers are processing, resisting, and reimagining this current cultural moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we had over 500 submissions, and most of the book came off our submittable. Not the entire book. What we are really grateful that we have a core of press members who have also won awards from the press and who also have stayed active. So we could call on them to have, the core, but almost everything else came off submittable. And the greatest surprises just came in on submittable.
There are so many metaphors within just the evolution of this one book. Before I want to pause and once again offer very genuine and very heartfelt approbation. What I've seen a lot of, and it's very understandable from my perspective, in the last 6 to 8 months, there's been a lot of kind of retrenching and a lot of pulling back. The fact that despite some serious headwinds and a lot of chaos in every sense of the word, you two both dug in and made this bigger and more expansive. That is such a statement to your character, the vision, and the willingness to let other writers shine. It's a significant achievement, and it's not lost on me that you would have had every reason to either postpone, go with your original vision because you already put work in, or pull back a little bit, because we all had to lick our wounds and take care of ourselves. Bordering on heroic levels of dedication and vision. I've never been more proud to call both of you friends, and it's
Sure.
super inspiring.
Thank you. I also have to give credit back to Grace, because at one point, Jona and I had lunch with her in Annapolis, and she said to us, have courage. Have courage. You can do a big book, because we were saying this book, feels like it has to have voices from all corners of our community that speak to how we change and impact in a positive way the future, how we are an inclusive group.
Yeah.
And she just kept repeating to us, right, Jona, have courage.
Yeah, and like you said, our board members and members of the press were really excited and supportive of this, of this project, and we had readers from the press who helped us. It wasn't just
Yeah.
Caroline and I choosing things. So we had 3 or 4 on each sort of committee reading things through submittable. But even though it's a big book, like Caroline said, we had over 500 submissions, and it was difficult
Yeah.
to choose what went in. to this, and we wanted, the way we laid it out, we can talk about later if you want, and what we were just really excited at the response and the diversity that's included in here.
Yeah. So, two things. First of all, I think we would all agree because we've all been there, on a lot of different sides of the process. But when a book is completed, there's a certain sense of achievement, and that's significant. When it comes out and looks as good and feels as good as this very professional, polished piece of work does, that's an achievement. But I think the ultimate arbiter isn't reviews, isn't sales, it's what kind of response is it generating? I'd love to hear both from the micro and macro community what you guys are hearing thus far, and just what the response has been. I know it's been positive. Spoiler alert,
It,
but talk a little bit about what you're hearing and seeing now that it's out in the world.
Yeah. Caroline,
it,
you can share the poets and writers.
well, we've never had poets and writers write about us. We're this small press. And I approached them in the fall and I said, this is just breakthrough for us. I don't know how to say it. We need more than like a grant and awards item in the back of the book. And I was very persistent. I have to tell you, that's one of my traits. I have a background in marketing and public relations, so 20 years of corporate America. And it's our first write-up, but what's key about it is one line where they say that this anthology speaks to the joy and resilience amidst the political turmoil in the United States. And I said, that's it, Jona. This writer got it. She got it. And she saw an early arc because they have very long lead times. So she didn't even see the final work, because really up until we were ready to go to press. We use an on-demand lightning source as our publisher, press. We were fine-tuning it, what would be in and out, and what was placement and where things would go. But I think they nailed it. And then the other response, has been from our DC area writing community that we just had on Sunday. I mean, this was just published September 9th. Sean, you are our first interview, just so you know.
Yay, me.
Yay, we have a few others planned. We have it in the works. But people were what we have seen is we have done one, we didn't even call it a reading. It was like a preview at Politics and Prose. We did a literary salon, and which are our 3-hour events, which we're doing around DC. And they're all on now the theme of America's future. And people sat there like this was a hymnal, like this was there, and they were reading along. And it was just amazing. Yeah. And people bought, multiple copies because they wanted to give it to friends. And I thought, oh my God, this is something. We have something.
Oh, you have something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the response has been just overwhelmingly positive, and people come up and they could have, at the event that we had on Sunday, that we, stop me and be like, thank you so much for this. This is so needed. We need this right now. And I think people are really appreciative, writers or non-writers, just appreciative to have a wonderful collection from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area they can turn to and feel that sometimes, we're not alone, and we all have these different feelings. And there's a broad representation in this book too. So I think there's really something for everyone.
There is. And in fact, that you both just couldn't have teed up my next question. This is a topic that we all have discussed before. I know we all believe in, but it always warrants further unpackaging. Whenever I'm talking to writers and publishers, the C word comes up, by which, of course, I mean community. Right. And what you both have both cultivated, built upon, inherited, and celebrated is this community that it revolves around the press, but also your own kind of backgrounds, but more this alchemy that exists when you tap into the local kind of creative community and you do get this representation. And then again, the metaphors write themselves. Of course, it's inclusive. Of course, it's diverse. Of course, it's inspiring because all these people are so accomplished and impressive and they all care. But talk a little bit about your notion of community and how that has been integral to the work that you do, both on one side of the desk as editors and publishers, but just bringing it into the world, having the confidence and the courage to keep after this.
Well, I don't know, Caroline, I guess what I'm thinking.
Go ahead, Jona. I see you thinking.
I am thinking because it's a really good question. And
Yeah.
I got my MFA here in Washington, D.C. at American University. And so I kind of had that sense of community from getting my MFA here. And then I kind of lost it a little bit because I was just kind of just doing, general writing workshops. And then when my first book came out, it really hit me of a sense of what a community we have in this area, how powerful we are, um, and the level of commitment that people make to show up to events, like showing up. That's such a huge part of the part of the community is showing up, and we were able to connect with a lot of other community organizations, writing organizations that team up and do events. So I guess to answer that question, community is essential. Without the community, we wouldn't have the book. And we're always adding to it. It's always evolving, which is wonderful too. Kind of
Yeah.
just briefly, things that came in on Submittable, of course we recognized some of the, the names, but there was just wonderful moments of surprise of like, I have no idea who this person is. And you look them up, I'm like, oh my gosh, they live down the street and I didn't know that they were, writing. And so you connect with people and everybody just kind of builds in. It's like a snowball and we just keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to echo somewhat what Jona said, though, my background's different. 13 years ago, I moved down to DC from the New York area. So I'm total New Yorker, born in the Bronx, grew up in New Rochelle, went to school up in Syracuse, lived in Manhattan and Long Island. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. And my husband, like many people, had the opportunity to come down here, federal employee. And I said, okay, it's probably the only place I can live that is other than New York would be here. And I came down here not knowing a soul. I took a class at the Writer's Center, and suddenly I had a writing group. And I had gotten as a second career my MFA from City College. So I had an MFA in fiction. I had 2 young adult novels published. And here I am in a flash fiction course because I need to find my tribe, and I didn't know where to look. The other place I looked was politics and prose, where I walked in and got a job. I didn't really need a job, but I had 2 little kids I was taking care of, but it was a part-time book selling job that was super fun.
Yeah.
So between those 2 things, I started piecing the literary world together in DC, and it's just so incredibly vibrant and vital and interconnected. And people want to pull those connections together in DC, is what I realized. And when Jona and I talk about community, we really talk not just about the writers, but really working with people like the Writers Center and Interloop and Day 8. And at AWP, we've teamed up with 5 other small presses. So if you're at AWP in Baltimore, find us. We're going to be at Pickles Pub with 5 other small presses on Thursday night. That's community to me. It's not feeling like you have to be afraid to reach out to another group.
Yeah.
It's embracing what they have and what you have and finding, that great sweet spot.
Yeah, and I think what you both are also really helping articulate is one of the many cliches that comes up when people are either asking about writing or talking about writing. There's a lot of understandable discussion about the loneliness, the rejection, the competition, how hard it is to be a writer, all of which is true and warrants plenty of discussion and empathy. However, one of the things that I love having the opportunity to point out is that being part of a community is a selfless act, but the rewards one gets for one's creativity, for one's network, and for one's sense of being part of something that isn't exclusive, that isn't a country club, that isn't based on accomplishment. It's this organic community of like-minded, very sensitive, artful people. I always try to encourage and explain to people this, believe me, you're going to be very rewarded in ways you don't anticipate. So it's, to me, what you both are describing and the lives you lead is a ready-made antidote to the people that are feeling isolated and alone and maybe a little selfish. Understandably, again, as an inexperienced writer, one might think, I've got to write this book and then I got to promote it and I got to save all my energy. And the reality is kind of looking outside oneself can be restorative. And I've found, speaking only for myself, it's also fed my creativity. Just like being in a classroom or being around interesting people, that's material. So all of this stuff about community, while I'm a big believer in it, obviously, I appreciate that non-artists can hear that and go, yeah, yeah, you guys talking about community. This is very practical stuff. And again, you both kind of epitomize the power of this.
Well, thank you. I have to say I could never do the role I do without Jona, that we are really true partners in this. And people have sort of asked us about that because um, we have very different backgrounds. We're, lead very different types of lives. I'm uh, uh, Jona's totally DC. I'm suburbia. Not that I always want to be suburbia, but it seems to be. But it's really been one of the greatest joys of my life. Is not only when I get that acceptance, which we all want.
Yeah.
We all want. I had a big rejection today, and I was like, oh, but I have to talk to Jona about this. So I'll just focus on that, what I have to do. And I think that's partly, just going back to the anthology, how we got things done. Like we did have a vision that we wanted it to be big. We did have a vision that we wanted it to incorporate unusual forms for us. So, for example, there is an Instagram story in there. There is a play in there that I accepted on the prose side. There is erasure poems in there. So we did take chances on forms that we're personally not comfortable, with or used to working with, and that was exciting from an intellectual and creative point of view.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think being a writer, but also my role at Washington Writers Publishing House, they definitely complement each other, because you read with empathy and you read, we do get out of our comfort zones reading things like, hey, I don't write like this, but I really like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm kind of inspired. Maybe I'll try this. Um, I just learned the form we had at an event the other night. Of course, now I forget. It's not a sonnet, contrapunctual.
Oh,
I think he was talking about that, which I really didn't know too much about, but I learned, right? I was like, hey, let me try that. And they sent examples. It was amazing. The play that Carolyn accepted is so fun. It's totally great. And the author is amazing. So I think, we're reading for our contest and, I'm trying to get my second poetry collection together. And you kind of, by reading these manuscripts, you see what works. You see a rhythm, you see, some risk, taking, and you see different structures. And it's maybe not something that I would have considered doing as a poet myself, but I really admire that. And like, hey, maybe why not try it? A lot of people like this and it's rising to the top. It's like, hey, maybe that's a little, let me try that too.
Yeah, I mean, so you both already anticipated my next question, so I'm satisfied, but I'll invite you to elaborate a little bit if you care to, which is there's this interesting intersection, right? You are very prolific, again, on one side of the table as editors, publishers, etc., but you're also still very active as writers. I would imagine the answer is it's helped your writing, but maybe talk a little bit about how your writing maybe has changed or evolved in ways you would never have imagined, before you took on these roles.
Good, Caroline.
well, it has changed, and it changed just from America's future because of the breadth of the work that I read. I mean, Joan and I both read all the prose and poetry in the book. He was the final editor on the poetry. I was the final editor on the prose. But because we had to weave it together so that it felt like a whole and not, that we just threw pieces on the page, I did more reading of poetry, and I realized how much I love poetry. I'm not a poet, but it made me take a poetry class and read Diana Seuss, who I love. And I'm writing on a whole series of these micros that are very tightly written. And I wrote one just for America's Future. And Joan and I both said to each other, if we're going to make this big, we could put one of our pieces in it, which we did not do with This Is What America Looks Like. We felt we should just be editors and above. And we're so immersed in these words and in this connection between the political and the personal at the moment that we felt that we could also write to the prompt and write to the moment. So that was a big change, but it also really made me love poetry anew. I mean,
I love it. I love to hear it.
I mean, I totally agree with that. And I don't read a lot of extended fiction a lot anymore because I'm reading so much poetry, but I love the pieces, of course, that were selected in this. And we have, I mean, I wrote sort of my first sort of political poem for this book. Like, I don't really consider, I know the private is political and the political is private and kind of getting into those ideas, but I don't like consciously like write about it. So I consciously wanted to respond to our own prompt. And that's where the poem came from. So it took me to something outside my own comfort zone.
Yeah.
Speaking of your contributions, I wonder if you would both be willing to share a little bit, because I certainly am here for it.
And Joan, I would just also add, as Jona gets his pages, that we heard from writers that this broke through their own writer's block, this prompt to think about tomorrow, to think about the future. Serena Augusta Cox, who is the Gaithersburg Book Festival poetry coordinator, came up to us. She goes, I hadn't written a poem before I had this prompt. You forced me. I love when people say that. I love that we probably have half a dozen writers out of the 164 who were publishing for the first time their work is being published.
That's always a special treat, right?
Oh
To
my
have
God.
that opportunity.
Yes. It's just, I mean, I love that. And I'm not saying they're, I am saying that they're first time they're being published, but some of them ranges from, in their 20s to in their 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all valid because what you say matters. Just like you say in your essay, Sean, the story matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we have, so I've been trying to flipping through the book. We have a lot of visual components here as well. I know Caroline took sort of like an Instagram story, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Another poet added their own sort of visual to the poem, and he submitted. He's like, hey, I do this visual stuff too, and they're kind of connected to these poems. Would you be interested in publishing that? I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's try it, So we've included things here that we've never published before, forms, visuals. And it was had a wonderful typesetter, Barbara Shaw, and it's a wonderful read through.
Absolutely. And again, just cheers for that kind of flexibility. What you're doing, right, is representing the art of now. It would almost be remiss to apply kind of old school sensibilities to the work that you're seeing. And I applaud both of you for being receptive and open to kind of letting the nature of the submissions dictate the flow of the collection. I think that's how it should be.
Yeah. It's just it's diverse in its, with the authors, but also in the representation of the craft of the art.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, Jonah, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'll read my poem. It's called List of the House Speaker's Concessions. So on page 49, just to give you a little visual, it's set in a sonnet form. It's numbered. The loose sonnet, just by line. List of the House Speaker's concessions. 1. You will have to recognize that many birds have feathers but cannot fly. 2. We will let you scream the birth scream once a week. 3. You can eat chicken soup on Tuesdays. 4. You must allow the prophet to rise and remember to let us have it. 5. Many members will hide your reading glasses. 6. The house will often remind you that you are a man in a sinkhole. 7. On the days we don't work, you don't have to brush your hair. 8. People who live here do not complain about the wind. 9. You will let our eyes sharpen enough to slaughter small goats. 10. You will be surprised how light the gavel is, but you cannot show this shock. 11. Any member can have wine on Fridays. 12. Efforts to speak in third person will be removed like a solitary glove. 13. The House insists that we are always 1 minute away from catastrophe. 14. Above all, you will not appear to be too helpful. It can be suspicious.
Wow. Thank you for that. I know it's always challenging, especially after having just read it, but maybe talk a little bit about you had already mentioned that you took the prompt. How was this experience for you putting that together, knowing that you were wanted to include it with all these other works?
Yeah, it was a really I'm a really slow writer. I mean, it took me, 15 years to get my first book out in the world. Um, but it was a moment when all that, the Speaker of the House, they couldn't, decide on one and all that stuff a few years ago. And even now, this is, everything happening. And I would watch like CNN and just really just kind of take lines and hear things and just keep them on a Word document. And they just kind of spiraled into, I was like, hey, let me do a sonnet form, just to give me some form of structure. And then I started numbering them and it just so the experience was wonderful. And it kind of just made me, become part of the book in a way besides just being editor, right? So you just wanted to
Yeah.
be included, but it was very nice.
Having artistic skin in the game. I love it. I love everything about it.
No, I love it. And it's funny and satirical. And we have a number of really biting satirical pieces.
Mhm.
Jonah, Len Kruger's, Adam Schwartz, these really biting pieces, which I think humor has to sort of cut through all of the bullshit, honestly, out there in the
Totally.
world. And
Yeah,
Jonas does that.
Thanks.
indeed.
You
Indeed.
know, these are extraordinary times we're living in. And just saying, let's all get together and, you know,
Right.
protest. Well, yes, but it needs more bite than that sometimes. And Jonah got it.
That's right.
Thank you.
One of my mantras this past year, and it predates the most recent election, but we hope and seek wisdom and courage from many of our elected leaders, and when that's lacking, we always can turn to art. But I
Right.
think for those of us that are living and writing, the gauntlet's thrown down. I mean, I certainly turn to our previous legends and heroes for, inspiration and solace. But I do think in a collection like this crystallizes that if not us, who? And so I think there is a kind of call to kind of creative arms to get involved and be willing to say something and give it some thought. To understand that this submission is going to be in company of other like-minded kind of impulses. I think that accrues a certain power.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
think, Sean, that's also why I was so thrilled when we got Jamie Raskin to submit a piece to us. And we opened with it because It's a speech he gave at the National Mall, but it's also incredibly literary. He quotes The Handmaid's Tale, 1984, Frederick Douglass, Thomas Paine, and it's a call to our spirits to have strength, have that courage that I spoke of before.
Mm-hmm.
And that as a collective voice, we're stronger. And I sometimes feel that's really what happens with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's been just wonderful. I mean, he did show up at our 50th anniversary party and event. He was just in the audience. Jona nudged me. We were hosting the event. He nudged me. He goes, Caroline, Jamie did show up. I had emailed his office. I had honestly spoken to him on the phone. Yeah. The world is, in a lot of has a lot of challenges at the moment for politicians to show up in public places, and he did. He showed up, him and his beautiful wife, in support of the other Raskin who is in the book. So the first Raskin who submitted was actually his sister, Erica Raskin, who's from Charlottesville, and who is a novelist and a literary citizen in her own right.
It speaks volumes about him. It speaks volumes about you two, and it speaks volumes about this endeavor that he took the time to show up. Just all I can say to that is yay and congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean,
that was Caroline.
It was me being very determined. Once I realized Erica Raskin was in, that we could possibly have a piece by Jamie as well.
Well, and listen, I think that also, I mean, full props to you for the perseverance and the vision, but I think that also, it underscores a common theme when we talk about writing and the writing life, being open to kind of not only innovation and creativity, but perseverance, not taking no for an answer, finding ways to make connections. All of these things are important, but I think, again, especially those on the outside of kind of the creative process tend to think, well, it's kind of fate. Like things just happen. People write and books get made. Ideally, that is exactly how it happens. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of intention. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to really hammer that home, that there's a lot of moving parts here. And without people like you two, the goalposts don't get moved, down accordingly to make it have the kind of response and reaction that it deserves.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome. I saw what you did there, by the way. You kind of subtly turned the attention to Jamie, but we were also going to hear from you if you would be willing to indulge us.
My own challenge. I mean, my good news in the publishing world to share with you, Jona knows this, is that I have my first novel for adults coming out in June. Thank you. It's called The Other Beautiful People. It's a workplace love story. It has had a long journey that started also at the end of the pandemic, but will be published in June with Regal House Publishing, a big independent. So I'm thrilled. But after you finish a novel or a book, it's hard to just sit down and start another. So as I said before, I was so happy that I sort of started reading poetry and it inspired me. And Jona, I didn't realize this, but my piece is also 14 lines. So all of my microfiction, in order to give it a form, I only write 14 lines.
Interesting.
So
always there.
I have now 60 of these pieces. I just had 2 published with the Hopkins Review. They have a title people like. I should have slept with them all. They are hybrids. Some are more autofiction, some are more fiction. And I didn't know if I could use the prompt for which was to really focus on what's next for this series. And I actually, unlike Jona, I write very fast. So once I have an idea, it goes right down on the paper. And this came to me after a walk in the park across the street from my house. So here it is. Are we ready?
Okay. Yes.
14 lines, 250 words. An American lament. She's strange, isn't she? Strolling through the park at this hour. A starless night with a storm threatening. Wind and rain, more rain than we've seen in months. The grass in the park hasn't been cut for weeks. She's singing now. Would you call it a dirge or lament? Texts one neighbor to another. Not even in English. If they knew it was about communal grief, would that make them think differently of her? The words can be interpreted as our father or our king, though she prefers our father, since she is addressing them to his ghost, calling on him to wrap the snow-scented winds around her thinly shawled shoulders, to see the flash of deer, of fox and raccoon that cut through the fir trees, to hear her ask, snow. He knows how she loves snow. Alvinu Malkenu, she sings out. Alvinu Malkenu. They wonder if one of them should call her cute husband or just be done with her, the strange neighbor night singing. Stranger than us, emoji, laughing face with tears. Let's call 911 before something happens, they conclude. Here, she's free of all the regrets of a dutiful life. The only one with her is Pop, a ghost who agrees that she should stroll the park anytime she likes. That snow would be better than rain, that she should have slept with them all, that America should be better, and that she should sing louder. Sing for snow. Sing for tomorrow. Sing.
Wow. Thank you for that. And you know, the symmetry of you two, you both have already alluded to the fact, you're different in many ways, right? Creatively, personally. But the fact that Jona mentioned he is deliberate and writes slowly and you write quickly, that's even more. I love the kind of opposites attract. So that came together quickly. You introduced it wonderfully, but talk a little bit about when you latched onto that and how that came together. I mean, it's so evocative, and as a local, that really speaks to me. That resonates.
Well, I mean, I live across the street from a park where there's a trail, and I was walking in the park, and this is from one of the oldest Hebrew prayers, Avinu Malkeinu, my God, my King, my Father, that Jews sing at Yom Kippur, the High Holy Days. And for some reason, I'm find myself walking through the park singing this, thinking of my dad who died a few years ago, and Jona and I actually have that in common, that both our parents have passed. And I thought, well, the neighbors must think I'm crazy. They must think I'm nuts. What is going on? I don't even have a coat on. And then it just hit me, that moment that you could sort of capture the tension in yourself and the setting. I love stories that are really grounded in place. And I came home after, one walk around the park, and I said, I think I have it. I have my story for America's future.
How
And I mean, it
gratifying.
went through a number of revisions. It's not that easy, as Jona knows. But I had a first draft really quickly because I think the combination of being outdoors and energy and walking and having that moment of grace with myself that I think I could write this. I think a lot of people get afraid and they're like, oh, it's really dumb and it doesn't make sense. And they talk themselves out of things, out of getting the words on the page.
There's a whole lesson in there, right? I think we would all agree. And it's funny because I was just having a conversation the other night at dinner, and I said to someone who was a beginning writer, if you can't let yourself be bad on a first draft, what's the point? It never comes out. It's not like in the Mozart movie where
Yes.
the angels dictate and you take notes and it happens. Like any
Right.
writer knows, and famous writers lament it doesn't get easier. I've learned to find a lot of inspiration in that instead of being intimidated. Like when you read a great, well-published writer say, it's hard every time. I find that wonderful because it's so
Yeah.
human. Doesn't mean you don't learn tricks and you don't become more confident, but and I was saying this the other night to this person. It's like, and why should it be easy? What other endeavors in life, whether it's being a concert violinist or a tremendous athlete,
Right.
a scientist, these are very hard. Why should writing be easy? It should be fun. It should be full of love. But we have to let ourselves suck and revise. And but I appreciate you saying that, Caroline, because how many people are already editing themselves before they even put it down on the page? Huge
That
mistake.
that I mean, this probably went through a dozen revisions. I was probably revising it in the after it was typeset. I think I changed a word. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I know Jona is also very meticulous. I mean, I think we're both um, uh, have some passion for line editing to really make sure the sentences sing.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's I was kind of I think it's again anyone that's watching this now that is creative, I think intuitively understands. But again, I think I say this both to acknowledge the work that you both do and your expertise, but I think there's like I said, that kind of baked in reward when
Mm.
one edits, when one steps outside of one's work, invariably skills and abilities are being refined that ends up helping one's own work. So it is this amazing paying it forward where things come full circle and one isn't doing it right for selfish reasons, but there's these amazing payoffs. And I would imagine you've already both kind of acknowledged that your own writing improves the more writing you see, the more writing that you edit and respond to. Again, it comes back to community and this wonderful fluidity of this entire process, which is all, of course, interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't write without reading. And I was in a workshop years ago, and we were workshopping someone's poem, and you make reference to other poems and other poets. He was like, "Well, I don't really read poetry. I just write it." I was just like, how's that working out for you? I mean, you have to read and see what's being, the craft, and understand the craft and be a part of that community in the craft. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 It's two
We
ways.
we have an intern program. We have a paid internship that opens November 1st. We're going to be hiring, bringing on 4 to 6 interns. And one prospect, has now become a very popular fellowship. It's all virtual. It's 12 weeks. They work directly with Jona and I. The one thing I will say to anyone who applies and gets past the first stage and is being interviewed by Jona and I, do not say you do not read. Do not say that
Yeah,
to writers, and particularly you do not read modern work.
that's right.
We all love
Very helpful.
classics, but I feel it's so important to read what is being written now. I am not someone who lives 20, 30 years ago just because I studied those writers and I only, I stopped at Raymond Carver, who I studied with. No.
Right.
I mean, I read everything that I can of new writers.
Yeah. I mean, I think most writers would agree that the reading work which of course should be mostly, if not entirely, pleasurable, that's its own full-time commitment to be abreast. Jona, you both just put it beautifully. It's both an obligation, it's a self-reinforcing endeavor, but I think it's incumbent upon any writer that hopes to be speaking to the times. How dare you put your work out there if you do live in a previous sensibility or are speaking to dead people. You usually can tell the writers that have an active, not social life, but an active reading life and an active curiosity to what's going on in the world politically, culturally, on a human level. That almost inexorably comes out in the work, in my experience, and it's all to the better, of course.
It certainly came out in this.
Mhm. I was going to say before we leave, another thing I wanted to mention is I again very understandably, but I've talked to a lot, I've read about a lot of people for a number of reasons who have felt very stifled, very blocked, very scared during this past year. I think with this anthology, among the many other things we've talked about, and the countless things we haven't talked about, that the writing itself can articulate, is this proves that even in our own local community, the written word is alive and well, and it isn't always easy, but we are seeing people that either are refusing to be stifled or blocked. And I think while holding space with tremendous empathy and compassion for anyone that is, for a variety of understandable reasons, but it gives me added confidence to see an anthology like this come out, a collection of work from this diverse group of people saying, "Oh, we won't be silenced. This is even more reason to put our name out there and contribute to something." So, yeah, I mean, enough said, but I think that's also important to note that this work is at once its own project and it speaks for itself, but the kind of the ripple effect of what that will do both for the contributors, the local community, but anyone that encounters this, I think it's going to be a real nice sense of encouragement for people to get involved.
Well, we hope that, Sean, too. We also feel really strongly about being out in the community, and we got a wonderful grant from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities to do these literary salons, these 3-hour events, which have creative writing workshops, readings, discussion. They're free. We're doing about 6 of them coming up in the fall. We also felt really strongly to be out there and do readings with all the writers. So we're going to be up at the Enoch Pratt in Baltimore. We're going to be down at the Rest and Use bookstore, as you know, because you're reading with us in November. So we have, Joan, I think I counted, 14 events coming up this fall?
Yeah, we have one at
Fall.
Frederick, Howard University,
Yeah.
Arts Club, City State Brewery. We're gonna check out our website
Yeah.
for listed there.
And what I will certainly, when we go live here, will embed links, but while people are paying attention, how can people discover the press, this anthology, and you each individually?
I would say start at our website, Caroline, right? And our social medias, of course, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Right. Agree. We're active. We're out there. We have a sampling right now of some of the poetry and prose from America's Future posted. Something that we have never done before. We asked about 20 writers to read their pieces. Jona and I read our piece too. It's now, just as of yesterday, posted on our website, posted on YouTube. So, we are a small press who's trying to sort of punch above our weight a little bit with this project. And I think people are really responding, Sean.
Yeah.
So people should come out, meet us, talk to us. Don't be by yourself and lonely and holding it in. These are safe, creative spaces we want to create in the community. And I think we do that online pretty well too. I mean, that's at least our my goal, and I think Jona's goal too.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
And well said. I think that is an ideal note to end on. I'll only add, I think we have given you a nice showcase to do exactly what I hoped and expected, which is talk about this timely, remarkable collection and talk about what it means, why it matters, how people can get involved and support it. I encourage everyone watching right now to support these two, the work that they do. Buy this book, buy a copy for a friend. Don't be alone. Feel encouraged. But above all, again, to my friends, I really I thank you not only for all the work you do, but just a unbelievably heartfelt congratulations again. Huge endeavor, absolutely successfully pulled off. So please make sure you celebrate yourselves too in the midst of all of this promotion. You both deserve some rest and relaxation and to be able to step back and be really proud of what you've done.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean. We do it because of you and all the writers
Yeah,
out there. So
absolutely.
thank you.
Well,
Thank
to
you.
be continued,
Mhm.
folks. I will put links up. I'll make sure everyone knows where to come to some of these events and help support and spread the word. Until next time, again, thank you guys. Be safe, be well, and thanks for all you do.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
you. We will see you soon. We'll
We'll
see
see
you
you
in
soon.
Reston.
Thanks for checking out Some Things Considered. Check us out online, figure out more information. And if you want to be a guest, let me know, and we will see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to Some Things Considered. Find out more, including how to be a guest, at seanmurphy.net. Reminder, we are obsessed with story and celebrating creativity. Also, we're here to advocate for the arts by any means necessary. Drop us a line, get involved, and support our creatives who are the lifeblood of our culture. I'm Sean Murphy. See you on the next episode of Some Things Considered.